All right, then, starting off with the first topic from Oguzhan about the last modified timestamps in this tracker issue.
Yes, hi. Let me share my screen just to facilitate the discussion, if I can. I think I need to give permission. Okay, I have to reopen the Google Chrome to allow to give the permission, so I'll just talk without sharing anything. But yeah, you can go to the tracker to see the details. There's also a Slack thread as well, opened like a couple of days ago. I carried that discussion into the tracker as the second comment. Basically, here the problem is at least like I see some other open issues in the net, but internally in Bloomberg, our problem is one of our clients is using Apache Flink, and it uses, I think, Java AWS SDK and two operations like to check the last modified time for an object. One is head object API call. Since the response is sent via HTTP one header, so as expected, it's in RFC format and it doesn't specify any millisecond precision, just like hour, minute, and seconds. And Flink also uses list objects API call. In that case, the response goes within like the JSON blob. And in JSON, the only timestamps are given in ISO format, which allows to use millisecond precision. So when I use the AWS, like it works like comparison, like for a given object, comparison of these two pieces of information work because they are the same. Because AWS normalizes the millisecond portion, it's always 0. But when they use S3 endpoint backed by Ceph or RGW, they get a true timestamp, like the millisecond portion is almost never 0. So that comparison fails and Flink decides, okay, something is not normal, like re-uploads the objects, etc. So the one question is, can we, like in that function specified in the tracker, can we just zero out the millisecond portion to solve the issue? And there's a concern about multi-site. I think Casey said may not be a concern. In the second comment, like I just carried your Slack entry into the tracker. So bottom line at this point, my understanding is if we change that RGW to ISO 8601 function to zero out the millisecond section, multi-site shouldn't be impacted. And the second concern, what happens if like there's a mixed version running and S3 clients are getting mixed information regarding last modified? A potential solution to that concern would be perhaps we can add a config.db item to give the liberty to storage admin when to like change that precision. Let's say after an upgrade, maybe announcing to S3 client saying that we are changing this, etc., and then update the knobs so that the last modified time is given how AWS would do. So that's pretty much like the summary of the tracker. Any concerns, questions on this one? So my like proposal would be like we can make this simple change and maybe add a config.db item and carry the discussion in that PR. But if we think this would cause any other issues that we don't foresee, like multi-site is off the list, I think maybe if there's any other concern, we can talk further on the tracker before moving on to this proposed solution.
I think the RGW to ISO 8601 function is used by several things, not just S3. So I would want to find a solution that only changes the S3 API. Maybe that would just be in RGW REST, like dump time truncated or something that we could use in specific cases for S3.
I see Swift also uses this one then, like not just S3, right? So, okay. Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, okay.
In terms of a new config option, I would prefer not to have one if we don't need it. Whether or not we do, I think clients, it's still possible that they'll see some timestamps move backwards as a result, and I don't know that we can avoid that. And I'm not sure that it would be a huge problem.
Just to be clear, the tracker says to remove the nanosecond, not the millisecond portion, right?
Actually, original tracker was opened by someone else like 4 months ago. And there was even an open PR if you look at the pull request ID, but it was closed, especially the concerns about the multi-site impact, I believe. I kind of didn't open a new one, but piggybacked on the existing one. So in any case, like head object will always return like at the second granularity, so, since it has to like abide by the RFC protocol, like date time protocol. So even if we give nanosecond, microsecond, or millisecond, any application, in this case Flink, comparing head object and list object will always fail. So maybe this is like a different problem from the original one that I'm describing. That comes the confusion, I think. Yeah.
So I think, okay, so what I'm trying to say, if this was only the nanosecond section, then I would say you can zero that, and any application that looks into nanoseconds probably looks into something meaningless in the world we live in, like the REST API world doesn't have any meaning from nanoseconds.
Even the millisecond portion, like the millisecond level, is also like not useful to those applications that rely on those two pieces of information to compare whether underlying objects are up to date. So it has to throw out altogether, like only seconds level should be.
Right. If AWS is truncating to seconds, then I think that we would want to do the same.
Okay.
Okay, then let's carry out this discussion on Slack as well. Let me dig, especially the first part, like this function is like shared by like multiple protocols, not just S3. Yeah, we can only change S3 response. And for the config DB item, I think that's not needed. Like that's the conclusion as far as I understand. But yeah, for the first part, I'll dig more a bit. Maybe we can continue the discussion on Slack.
Sounds great.
Okay, thank you. I think the next item is also from me. Actually, this is the one, this PR came on our attention recently, which is about a data corruption, like possible data corruption that can happen when the RAID SOAP RGW initiates times out. I think it's recently merged like early December into main. As far as we understand, the backport PR only, or backport tracker actually, only for Reef. There's no Squid or like Squid backport yet. Is my understanding correct? So if I look at the backport tracker, let me try to add it to.
I did just now create a tracker issue for Squid.
Okay, good. Yeah. So I think it's too late for Squid release, I assume, because it's like at the end of the QA process. Like, I mean, first of all, like how serious this issue could be. Like, what's the? It's hard
My
to say
understanding is that you would only ever get timed out errors if your if you enable timeouts at the Rados layer, and that's something that we've never really supported. I think some people are trying to use it, but there are races like this.
Actually, you know what? That opens up another discussion. Like we are lately, we were seeing like some OSDs like acting up, and RGW thread like hangs on the Rados operation because OSD doesn't respond or takes too long, and it wasn't timing out. And if the client keeps on retrying, we were getting all RGW threads are consumed, and RGW itself becomes unresponsive eventually if it takes too long. So what you're saying is there's an option to time out those Rados operations. We weren't aware of that. So is it like enabled at the compile time, or is the config DB option?
The config option.
Config option. Okay, I see.
I think it's Rados _ app _ timeout. And I will, in chat, I'm linking a tracker issue that we're using as a placeholder for handling inactive PGs and other slow requests gracefully. That's been complicated though.
Yes, yeah. Sounds good. So in this case, if that knob is not enabled, this is like this shouldn't be an issue for other users there who are using the default setting and timeout setting.
Right, the data loss would only be in a custom config.
Sounds great. Okay, thank you very much. That's all from me.
On that front, Casey, so it's the RGW's time to not do a timeout. Like that discussion is there as part of that tracker. I was just curious. You said that we have decided, or probably it was decided by the RGW to not do a timeout and keep on waiting. Any logical reason behind that?
Essentially because of this data loss bug, where we don't really have a way to know where all of the races would show up. So we're happy to fix them when they do, but timeouts globally, we've never been confident that we won't lose data or orphan data.
So lose data as in when the RGW is trying to store data into OSDs, right? I mean, the get should not be a problem, but at least the puts is where the problem is, correct?
Right. Essentially, RGW would see error codes and assume that it needs to do cleanup, even though the OSD may apply that right later on.
So that will leave with the orphan data there. Is that the use case? Mhm. And this knob is not currently specific. We cannot do it specific to HTTP operations, right? Like, oh, for gets, the timeout can always be there, but for puts, we can think more what solution we want, right?
The config option is global, I think, to the Rados GW daemon.
But there's no stopping. We can more granularize this to have enabled for the get operations versus put operations, right? At least a step forward of progression, I would say.
I'm not sure. I mean, some get operations do writes. We could find a way to extend the Rados client and objector to only timeout read operations.
Sure.
But yeah, I think this has kind of always been the semantic of Rados around like OSD full and inactive PGs, where it will just wait forever until it can apply the write. And that's not really compatible with RGW's HTTP the timeouts there.
I believe this should also be issues for CephFS, right? I mean, if they're trying to write and the OS doesn't respond back. Or probably any application that is using Rados.
I don't know about CephFS. I mean, a file system can generally block as long as it needs to.
As you have discovered, if you've ever debugged a buggy NFS server. If I can ask Casey one question that's sort of related to this, just because I want to get it rolling if possible. Do we want to try to get that data corruption fix into the current squid, like the one we're trying to cut now, or do we want to hold off onto the next one?
My opinion is that since it's only data loss, if you enable Rados timeouts, then it's not critical to block the release.
All right, that's what I thought. I just wanted to double check. Thank you.
Okay, and back to the agenda about backports for this. I created the tracker. I will raise a PR for the backport also. Moving on, I think this was a question from Jesse. This meeting URL has been stable every week.
Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure that I had gotten it into my calendar wrong, and that was the answer I'd hoped for. Thanks.
All right, any other topics for the agenda? Last call. All right, thanks all.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Thanks, everyone.